The Roman Empire stands as a colossus, its tales of conquest, glory, and governance echoing through time. Yet, within these tales lurk stories of scandal and infamy, particularly those of its rulers. Today, we delve into the lives of the top 5 scandalous emperors of Rome. From extravagant lifestyles to acts of cruelty and eccentricity, these emperors exemplify how absolute power can lead to remarkably scandalous behavior. Nero, ascending to the throne in 54 AD at the tender age of 16, quickly became synonymous with tyranny and extravagance in Roman history. His reign, beginning with promise under the guidance of advisors like Seneca, soon devolved into a spectacle of excess and cruelty. One of Nero's most infamous acts is the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. The fire raged for 6 days, devastating much of the city. While it remains unclear whether Nero was directly responsible, he capitalized on the disaster to rebuild Rome to his grand vision, constructing the opulent Domus Aurea. This act, seen as self-indulgent amidst widespread suffering, greatly tarnished his image among his people. Nero's reign is also marked by the severe persecution of Christians, whom he blamed for the fire. This move, motivated partly by scapegoating and partly by Nero's desire to suppress what he saw as a threat to traditional Roman values, led to the first major persecution of Christians in history. Beyond politics, Nero fancied himself an artist and musician, often performing in public, much to the chagrin of the Roman elite. His obsession with the arts was perceived as unbecoming of a Roman emperor, further denting his reputation. Nero's rule came to a tumultuous end in 68 AD, amidst rebellion and loss of support. Facing execution, he chose to take his own life, reportedly lamenting, "What an artist dies in me." Nero's legacy is one of controversy. He is often portrayed as a tyrant, yet some sources also note his popularity among the common people for his public works and performances. Gaius Julius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus, notoriously known as Caligula, ascended to the Roman throne in 37 AD. Early in his reign, Caligula's lavish expenditures on grandiose construction projects began to drain the state's treasury. He commissioned opulent palaces and floating bridges, extravagant displays of his absolute power. One of his most extravagant endeavors was the construction of luxurious houses upon the sea, complete with marble and gilded columns, an indication of his obsession with wealth and luxury. But it was Caligula's behavior towards the Senate that revealed his tyrannical nature. His treatment of high-ranking senators bordered on the sadistic. He is infamously remembered for forcing a senator to run alongside his chariot for miles, a humiliating display of power and contempt. He often mocked and belittled senators, sometimes making them stand all night outside his doors. Perhaps the most emblematic of his erratic behaviors was his fondness for his horse, Incitatus. Caligula's affection for Incitatus was so extreme that he allegedly planned to appoint the horse as a consul. This act was perceived not only as a sign of madness, but also as a blatant insult to the Roman political system. It demonstrated Caligula's disdain for the Senate and his desire to undermine traditional Roman values. Caligula's reign was also marked by sexual scandals and debaucheries. He was known for his numerous affairs and is said to have turned the imperial palace into a brothel. His behavior, considered immoral and shocking, further alienated him from the Roman populace and the political elite. His despotism extended to acts of extreme cruelty. He's known to have indulged in arbitrary and ruthless executions, often for his mere amusement. Caligula's erratic and cruel rule bred resentment and fear, culminating in a conspiracy against him. In 41 AD, after only 4 years of rule, Caligula's reign of terror and insanity came to an abrupt end. He was assassinated by members of his own Praetorian Guard, a grim testament to the widespread hatred he had created. Emperor Tiberius, who ruled from 14 AD to 37 AD, is a figure marked by a complex legacy. Initially celebrated as a competent military leader and a capable ruler, the latter years of his reign were overshadowed by scandal, paranoia, and moral decay. Tiberius, the stepson of Augustus, began his rule with promise, continuing the policies of his predecessor and maintaining the stability of the Roman Empire. However, as his reign progressed, Tiberius grew increasingly paranoid and disillusioned with his role as emperor. Seeking solitude and escape from the intrigues of Roman politics, he retired to Capri, effectively isolating himself from the affairs of state. This withdrawal marked the beginning of a dark and scandalous period in his governance. On the idyllic island of Capri, Tiberius's life took a turn towards the extreme. Historical accounts, though often sensationalized, paint a picture of an emperor indulging in excessive sexual exploits and perverse desires. The Villa Jovis, his palatial residence on Capri, was rumored to be a center of debauched parties and sadistic pleasures. Stories of Tiberius engaging in orgiastic activities and cruel sexual practices with young men and women have lingered through history, contributing to his infamy. Tiberius's paranoia also intensified during his time on Capri. He was known to execute or exile those he suspected of treason or disloyalty, often on flimsy evidence. The Roman Senate and people grew increasingly resentful and fearful of his erratic and tyrannical behavior. The later years of Tiberius's reign were characterized by a climate of fear and suspicion. His reliance on the Praetorian prefects, especially Sejanus, led to further abuses of power and political purges. The emperor's detachment from Rome allowed corruption and cruelty to fester in his administration. In 37 AD, this combination of scandal, paranoia, and misrule culminated in Tiberius's assassination, a grim end to a reign that had begun with such promise. His death, shrouded in mystery and controversy, was met with relief by many in Rome. Emperor Commodus, ascending to power in 180 AD as the successor of Marcus Aurelius, is often remembered not for his governance but for his scandalous reign that precipitated the decline of the Roman Empire. Commodus, deviating drastically from his father's wise and stoic rule, indulged in excesses and eccentricities that shocked and destabilized Roman society. Commodus's obsession with gladiatorial combat was central to his notorious legacy. Unlike any emperor before him, he would frequently descend into the arena to fight as a gladiator. This was not only unprecedented for a Roman emperor, but also considered a disgrace to the dignity of the office. His participation in these bloody spectacles, fighting against both wild animals and human opponents, horrified the Roman elite and commoners alike. Commodus fancied himself as the embodiment of Hercules, even going so far as to dress like the mythical hero and adopting the title Roman Hercules. His rule was marked by self-indulgence and a blatant disregard for the duties of governance. Commodus spent exorbitant sums on games and statues of himself, depleting the state's treasury. He was known for hosting lavish parties and orgies, further distancing himself from the responsibilities of his position. This neglect led to the deterioration of Rome's political and economic stability, eroding the achievements of his predecessors. Commodus's behavior grew increasingly erratic over time. He claimed divine status and demanded to be worshipped as a living god, further alienating him from the Senate and the people. His rule was also marked by paranoia and cruelty. He purged political adversaries and perceived enemies, leading to an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. In 192 AD, Commodus was assassinated, an act carried out by those closest to him, a reflection of the deep-seated hatred and desperation he had engendered. Elagabalus, ascending to the Roman imperial throne at the tender age of 14 in 218 AD, quickly became one of the most scandalous figures in Roman history. The young emperor, born Varius Avitus Bassianus, was a high priest of the sun god Elagabal in his native Emesa. Upon assuming power, he brought his religious devotion to Rome, insisting on the supremacy of Elagabal over traditional Roman deities. This religious shift not only alienated the Roman priesthood, but also the general populace, who saw it as an affront to their ancestral beliefs. Elagabalus went so far as to replace the eagle, a symbol of Roman imperial power, with the black stone of Elagabal, further fueling discontent among the Romans. Elagabalus's personal life and rumored sexual escapades were a constant source of scandal. His reported behavior, which included wearing women's clothing and engaging in relationships with both men and women, was considered shocking and unacceptable by Roman societal standards. Among his most controversial acts was his marriage to a Vestal virgin, Aquilia Severa, which was not only a religious taboo, but also a violation of Roman law. The emperor's eccentricities extended to his court, where he surrounded himself with dancers and charioteers, elevating them to high positions of power. He is said to have spent lavishly on feasts and entertainments, further draining the imperial coffers and alienating the military and political elite. Elagabalus's disregard for Roman traditions and the dignity of the imperial office resulted in widespread disapproval and dissent. In 222 AD, after only 4 years of rule, Elagabalus was assassinated by the Praetorian Guard, an act driven by the widespread desire to restore traditional Roman values and order. His death, at the age of 18, brought an end to one of the most tumultuous and scandal-ridden reigns in Roman history. The reigns of Nero, Caligula, Tiberius, Commodus, and Elagabalus are testimonies to the complexities and temptations of absolute power. Their stories, steeped in intrigue and excess, continue to fascinate and serve as cautionary tales about the dangers of unrestrained authority.